You mentioned earlier that you've worked with sort of a range of athletes of different ages, probably both men and women, boys and
Yes.
girls. Is that correct? What would you say is the age range of athletes that you've worked with, the youngest athlete and the oldest athlete?
So actually, just recently, I've been working with a 15-year-old girl, and that's probably the youngest that I've worked with. The oldest I would say is probably mid to late 20s, and really late 20s, based on eligibility and COVID eligibility. Now some of the athletes are getting a little bit older, but it's been fascinating to think about the differences, even in just a 10 year span between this 15-year-old and some of the older athletes that I've worked with. Mostly, I think it's partially developmental, in terms of their processing of their own thoughts, but it's also something about their individual characteristics that either allows them to be successful in processing their thoughts, or that inhibits them from thinking through clearly. And there's a range for every individual.
Right. So you've worked with some younger athletes as young as 15 and some, I don't know if we'll call them older, but certainly with respect to the other age group, older, right? So mid to late 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And you would say that there are distinct differences in the mental performance struggles that each group has, or talk to me about that a little bit. Offer some clarification on that if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for instance, this younger girl that I was working with, she tends to not be able to process her own thoughts as well, I'm finding. And so my approach to working with her is a little bit more of recognizing, like, oh, she doesn't recognize that this thought process is causing a problem. And so I need to ask her more in-depth questions. I need to maybe ask her to reflect a little bit more. And to be fair, I've also had athletes who are early 20s who cannot do that, or who really struggle with processing their own thoughts. So I do think that there's some developmental differences, absolutely, but there's also some individual differences. So it's hard for me to just say younger athletes have these characteristics. Maybe the biggest thing that I think is a difference in how I approach them is that I do change the vocabulary that I use with the younger group, try to make it more digestible for them.
Okay. So the younger group is a little bit less knowledgeable about sort of advanced vocabulary, and you try to break it down into a little bit more of a digestible, to use your word, format, so that they kind of understand it a little bit better on a more basic level.
Yeah.
Okay. And you talked about sort of processing their own thoughts, right? As something that certainly I believe all of us really, but athletes included, because that's what we're talking about here, develop a better skill as we age, right? We're better at having sort of that self-reflection and sort of metacognition, being aware of our own thoughts as we age.